everyone, welcome back. We have three speakers in this session. Our first speaker is Yıldız Kahveci. She has completed her primary school education in Troilus. After she graduated successfully from Mimar Sinan High School, she started her bachelor's studies in the Department of American Culture and Literature at A-130. In her sixth semester, she went to Austria as an Erasmus student. Being highly interested in the field of literature, she intends to continue her studies in a master's degree in American Studies program in Europe. As a main field of study, she is concerned in women's studies and aims to assume a feminist point of view in her oncoming studies. We will listen to a paper titled Identity and Mother, Father, Dichotomy in Toni Morrison's Below and Jazz. Now I'd like to leave a speech to her.
Thank you. Welcome everyone, and I thank you for the art session. I will focus on mother dichotomy in Beloved and Jazz in terms of identity. Though widely known as murder narratives, Toni Morrison's two novels, Beloved and Jazz, as the former one is concerned with the felonious murder of a child by her own mother, the subsequent writer gives voice to a slaughter carried out by a man of his young lover. Indeed, going in detail, are more of two stories of lost souls who cannot place themselves anywhere owing to their common ground of being brought up without mother care. Morrison argues that self-love depends upon the self's first being loved by another self. Before the child can love herself, she must experience herself being loved and learn that she is indeed valuable and deserving of affection. So, Morrison widely deals with either slave or ex-slave characters who love to receive any love primarily from their mother, which causes them to be in deep crisis of identity and difficulty of living harmoniously with the self and the human community and the past. Because of the indispensable burdens of the slavery, which out of many is the mandatory separation of mother and child. And due to the lack of this mandatory separation, they are far away from experiencing self-love. Hence, their suffering of lifelong unbelonging to anyone and the will of unification with the missing one can be considered as a consequence of all these and a reason of the character's quest of self through the novels. Moreover, Morrison confronts the reader with another character, Golden Gray, who is also in search of a lost parent, but instead of a mother, father this time. However, this separation, besides causing an inevitable loss of identity, causes hatred and a will of destroying his father accordingly himself. So, I intend widely to focus on the parental relations and to what extent they affect the characters mentioned above in the process of their identity constructions, or on the contrary, the loss of their identities. However, the main question is how the effect of lack of a mother affection and the lack of a father can differ on such a great extent, even though in both of the situations identity crisis is inevitable. The loss of a mother leads the character to a lifelong quest of his missing motherly affection. On the other hand, loss of a father leads to hatred and inward will of destruction and disgust. The topic of parental relations is widely referred one in both of the novels. Especially maternal care and its lack are in the core of both Beloved and Jazz. Toni Morrison closely relates motherhood and slavery, and widely retraces the indispensable negative outcomes of slavery over the mothers who were also daughters once. It is obvious that both of the novel's protagonists, Chaucer, Violet, and Sete, suffer from lack of a mother and accordingly get mentally lost. Being abandoned by their mother, they get fractured inside their souls and their bodies get separated from their self. This creates an alienation which is only possible to heal with the putting back the long-gone mother or the affection of hers. self and to locate the best of the self in another, the beloved. So it can be said that Joe and Sete displace the self and locate the best of the self on someone whom they substitute with their lost mothers. Joe locates himself on Dorcas, his girlfriend, and Sete on her daughter, beloved. Sete in beloved kills her own daughter in order to protect her from slavery. On the other hand, Joe in Jazz kills his girlfriend because of a jealousy of her being with another man. However, both of the murders are based on the fear of losing the beloved, and both are the people whom the protagonists devoted their lives to. As Jones states, they locate the best of the self in other beloved. Therefore, it can be said that the inclination of murder derives from the crisis of identity because the protagonists substitute their self with the people they appreciate most. In addition to this, neither the characters in Beloved nor in Jazz had the opportunity to experience mother care, as all of them were forced to grow up separately due to the rules of slavery. The black women are forced to leave their children and go to the fields under slavery. When we look to Beloved, we see a long, infected chain of women, all of whom lack mother care, and accordingly they long for mother care and provide it sufficiently for their own children. When Seti tries to explain to Beloved why she cut her throat, she is explaining an anger handed down through generations of mothers who could have no control over their children's lives, no voice in their upbringing. As this infectious disease goes on with the generations, its effects are also present in the successive generations. These are Sete, her mother, and her daughters. Here, Sete is in the center of the chain because she is the one who receives insufficient care and hence lay on insufficient care for her own daughters. As if all the other children of slaves, she did not have the opportunity to know her mother, having been forced to get separate in infancy. When Beloved asked Sete if her mother ever fixed her hair or not, Sete's answer summarized everything perfectly. She says that she must have nursed me for 3 weeks. That's the way the others did. Then she went back in rice and I sucked from another mother whose job it was. So to answer you, no, I reckon not. She never fixed my hair nor nothing. She didn't even sleep in the same cabin most nights, I remember. Too far from the lineup, I guess. One thing she did do, she picked me up and carried me behind the smokehouse. Back there, she opened up her dress front and lifted her breast and pointed under it. Right on her rib was a circle and a cross burned right in the skin. She said, "This is your mom. This is..." And this, she pointed. I'm the only one got this mark now. The rest that. If something happens to me and you can't tell me by my face, you can know me by this mark. Owing to the fact that she has never received any maternal care, she never knows how to show any. Thereby, even after the evolution of slavery, black women continue lacking mother care as they were also daughters once and have never received any care. On the other hand, Joe kills his girlfriend he already likes the self. Dorcas is indeed a track for him in search of his identity. She is what Joe has lost, the trace of something for which he must hunt. Actually, the fracture which we mentioned before is his lost parents in Joe's case. Especially his mother, Wild, is where he locates his lost being. He hunts all through his life to be claimed by her. Being successful, he finds new tracks. Being unsuccessful, he finds new tracks to follow, and the last of which is Dorcas. She becomes the symbol love sense of self. This is why she got lost on the way of bringing up her children. These children, while missing a mother care and learning to love, they also miss to learn to be someone as well, because the self must be known and loved, and in Morrison's words, honored and released. When we do not name or nurture our own selves, we lose, forget about, or put to sleep as Violet does, the person we are. So, both Sally and Violet miss the opportunity of learning how to love and to be loved, and accordingly how to love themselves. In adulthood, the necessity of searching themselves derives from these missing points of their childhood. Yet, firstly, they need to find their parents in order to build a self-identity. On the other hand, fatherhood seems to be less important in the process of one's identity construction. Contrary to the others, Golden Gray, who suffers from a crisis of identity, even though brought up by a mother, rises hatred against his father, who is unable to show fatherly affection to him. Actually, he is a mulatto who was born from a white mother. He mostly suffers from being neither white nor black. As John states, his name indicates his in-betweenness. He is golden, not white, gray, not black. He feels from the moment he finds out that he is black tainted. He hates his black self, and this self-hatred means that he has to destroy its source, his father. Dichotomy appears at this point, and while lack of a mother makes the child hunter of a mother, as Joe is throughout the novel, how does lack of a father makes its way until self-destruction? In neither of the novels, any male character is given the role of a father. Even if there appear some female characters, they are associated with their children as if in Golden Gray's case. Nevertheless, Morrison does not totally separate mother from the child. Even though the opportunity of fulfilling mothering is not given to the black woman, she unifies mother and child in the same characters in her narratives. As it is narrated in Jazz, Joe longs to discover where he comes from so that he may at last know who he is. So in Joe's case, as in the others, the mother determines where they come from and who they are. And when they lost the one who they really are, they confront with a crisis of identity. On the other hand, Golden Gray, rather being a part of his father, hates to be a part of him, and the idea of having been came from him. As if the other characters that are also missing a parent, Golden Gray starts his quest only to cut his bonds from his father if there is left any. All in all, it can be said that Morrison never placed fatherhood to the center of characters' identity formation. As a matter of fact, she never puts together father and child as she does with the mother. It is understood from the narratives that fatherhood plays almost no importance in the construction of self-identity. Golden Gray is also in a loss of identity, even though he does not lack a mother care as the others do, but a father. He prefers to cut away this incomplete half of him, which he never sees completable with his other part. On the other hand, there are the other characters like Joe, Violet, and Sally, who are inevitably in need of filling this gap which mothers obligatorily create when they leave their children. So, the dichotomy in Beloved and Just is that while mother is the inseparable part of the individual, father can be a redundancy, although either of their absence causes an identical crisis.
Thank you, Yıldız. Our next speaker is Pınar Çelik. She was born in Sakarya in 1989. She graduated from Mithat Paşa Foreign Language Intensive High School in 2007. She has been studying in the Department of English Language and Literature at Istanbul University since 2007. She is a senior student. Her main interests are romantic poetry, postmodern short story, absurd drama, and Irish literature. She is strongly interested in writing short stories, and she has been writing since 10 years. In addition to this, she deeply likes reading horror tales, especially from Victorian era. Besides, she likes learning new languages and cultures, particularly of South American countries. She can speak advanced English and a little bit Spanish. She likes to get her master's degree on English literature after graduation and start her academic career. We will listen to a paper titled Goodness but Not Greatness, Women as an Underprivileged Member of Society, Unless by Chaucer. Now I'd like to give a speech to her.
Thank you. And thank you all for having managed to come at this hour on the second day of the conference. As she states, my title is Goodness but Not Greatness, and I think you will understand what I'm talking about while I'm analyzing the novel, Unless by Chaucer. To begin with, having written in 2002, Unless is Chaucer's last novel and presumably the most striking one among her other novels, including the ones which won several awards such as Pulitzer, Orange Prize for Fiction, etc. It's like she meant it to be a semi-biography and wanted to tell her own story as a woman too. But to all intents and purposes, this is a novel written by a woman about a woman writer. And then again, she also writes about a woman in this three-layered story. There are several subject matters, of course. But I want to focus on the major one. Woman as a secondary sex in the patriarchal society. Shields focuses on the universal truth, as Rita calls it, the protagonist, which is accepted by not only men but also women, and that is the inferiority of the female sex in the patriarchal society. Rita lives with her husband and two daughters in an exclusive suburb near Toronto, and she also has a daughter going to college, sharing the same apartment with her boyfriend, brilliant and keen Nora. As they lead a perfectly calm life, all of a sudden they found out that Nora is missing. They do not hear from her for a few days, just before they are told that she's begging at a street corner in downtown Toronto. And everyone tries to figure out why she's doing something like this, because she is always considered as a young woman content with her life. She sits there with a banner with written goodness on it in her lap. And Rita also experiences a delayed epiphany, which, let's say, as Nora adopts a new kind of life, Rita also experiences a delayed epiphany, which search and answer comes up before us. And woman can never be as great as men. We read this statement from Danielle Westerman first, whose memoirs are translated by Rita Winters. And Rita's early university years, she was a, let's say, mentor of Rita. She's a well-known French feminist writer from Rita's early university years, yet this relationship is also a quite problematic one. We read about lots of women in Unless, and they are all miserable in some way or another, because they are simply just women, and they are doomed to be the second one in society. Then again, we comprehend what the word goodness means as we keep on reading. Both Nora's and other women characters struggle just to exist in such a world which offers them nothing rather than a submissive role as opposed to their actual expectations. The incident which helps Nora to open her eyes to the real state of women is really a shocking one for a young woman like her, who is brought up in a comfort, free from problems, and loved intensively by her parents. She witnesses a woman in a veil burning herself intentionally in public. One day she goes out to buy a dish rack to the supermarket, and when she is on her way out, she sees this oriental woman in flames and runs for help towards her at once. She tries to put out the flames without thinking for a single moment and grasps her with her both hands. One is holding the dish rack at the same time. This event makes Nora think of the possible reasons. Why would a woman want to burn herself in front of everyone? And on purpose, especially. And she realizes it must be because she must not have any other options to express herself. This society makes her wish to burn herself. She awakes now, I mean Nora. Because we did it, men and women together. Men because they put women in the position of the second race, leaving them always in the shadows on themselves. And women because they completed in men deeds and their patriarchal system. And the dish rack in her hand makes her realize what what she's been doing to herself all this time. Here we see how smart Troilus is to put this object into the sea, not any other one. And let's say here we see, I believe that it's because dish rag is something a woman needs to think of, whether it's necessary for a cozy home or not. It's not obviously Nora's Nolan, functions excellently as we digest the story. Also, looking back in order to see the ultimate reason for her breakaway makes the point in this escape much more hitting. Like the fact that women set herself on fire as a self-expression, Nora sitting at the corner of a street with a poster on her lap is also a strange way of expressing herself. Women have always been left without a choice by men throughout the ages. And they have given root to women's life on account of thinking them as weak, vulnerable, or even sometimes evil creatures. Evil creatures who may cause problems for men if they are allowed to act on their own. As we can see in Alexander Pope's saying, quote, most women have no characters at all, unquote. So they are meant to be shaped by men. This is what Nora stands again, and her poster is a token of her rebel to this notion. That means she's experiencing an inner revival. It would not be enough for her to leave her school, boyfriend, or family after being aware of this universal truth. Instead, she chooses to react in an expressive way. At the beginning of Unless, Rita says that her novel will be about those children, of course referring to Nora, her daughter. Yet she's unable to realize that her daughter has just come to life. I will analyze the reasons why Rita is unable to understand her daughter later. Nora, unlike her mother, is not late to stand up to this compulsory role attributed to women. And as soon as she sees the core of this distorted life, she's out there in the streets to make other women realize this and get out of the shadow, or you can say wings of men. And how does she do that? Her poster, written goodness on it. Simple as that. She does not have to use a phallocentric language or wear herself out to gain recognition. Just presenting that object to the non-careless and ordinary people who are passing by at that spot every single second is fairly enough to practice her goal. And what does this poster mean? We get skeptical as we ruminate about it as well. A woman is never referred as great whatever she does or accomplishes or, let's say, ventures for anything. This quality is only attributed to men and is also really easy to earn it for him, whereas a woman is not entitled for it by birth because of her biological sex. As far as I'm concerned, this statement sums up everything I've been discussing. It is being put forth by a true feminist like Westerman first. She appears as a spiritual daughter or, let's say, a follower of Simone de Beauvoir, who belongs to the first wave of feminism. Rita is so influenced by Westerman that she also believes that Nora will know goodness, but never learn greatness. We see how Rita imitates Westerman as she does in many aspects. She thinks that Nora has found out the big female secret of wanting but not getting. As for Westerman, quote, power which women seem to possess has to be seized, ignited and released, unquote. That means we are not again meant to be equal with men. As I put forth before, women have always been left with a full fate, even if they are allowed to make a choice. And Westerman's is not to have a family. We can think this in both ways. First one is that in order to be a successful individual, you have to give up the idea of having a family or children or, let's say, a cozy home. And the second one can be, she does not even want to have any family at all. But when you think of it, it seems more likely that one wants to have a family, a company with around him or her. Still, in Westerman's case, it might be the normal one to avoid from having a family after she has gone through. Like she says, a woman has to seize her power, fight for it. And when she gains it, when she does gain it, she has to pay for the price, because she's naturally not supposed to have any. After all, this struggle and fighting, even if she does gain it, an explicable anger takes over her, because consciously or subconsciously she knows that she is obligated to fight for it at the first time. This anger reveals itself to the women who have the same sex with herself in some cases, or less frequently to the men because she accepts the man as the other and feels good when she's admired by the other, or better yet, the patriarch who puts her into this position of anger, I mean. And if you try to manage both of them at the same time, it is inevitable to be in 2 months and end up in misery like Rita. We are left with no space to be happy without making tough decisions. We are doomed to let go one of our sides, either intellectual or domestic one. For a few decades, it's said that women can be both a mother and an intellectual at the same time. Yet, when it comes to prioritize those aspects, being an employee or an intellectual come along after in the list. Though she will not able to do that until she gives up using male-oriented language and starts speaking Nora's body language, which is considered inferior as opposed to mind that is associated with men, of course. After these suggestions, it is acceptable that Nora is a much more accomplished woman than both of these women, because she transcends the terms of society and tries to survive in another level of understanding. Virginia Woolf asserts that women, quote, women have served all these centuries as looking glasses, possessing the magic and delicious power of reflecting the figure of man at twice its natural size, unquote. She puts forward the issue so perfectly that we see how women are destined to serve to men one way or another. And Rita does serve to husbands, i.e. the society. Tom is a loving, decent husband, and a part of a few passages he does not appear much actively in the novel. And when he does, he brings the questions of the superiority of men over women. Being a doctor, he is the one who works outside and brings the money to home. And in the case of Rita, writing novels means cooking with your clothes. And you do not need to be outside for it, of course. You have to be indoors and just think that is considered as a passive job, unlike other professions. For this reason, Rita is already undermined by her surrounding, not verbally, but instinctively, because an artist is always treated as an outsider. And art, let's say this outsider's exile is a box. Even though she calls her spot at the used office desk a freedom chair, it is obvious that she is not completely free from the problems of her life. She seems to go on her life while Nora is out there somewhere begging in the streets. She tries to write a sequel for her first novel, My Time Is Up. But this novel will not only be about those children, as she says, but also building her own identity as an individual also. She will fail though, because she will try to put a mirror in front of her again, but this time not her husband, her daughter. That is why I keep saying that even her 20-year-old daughter is ahead of her when it comes to being an individual. She cries herself as pseudo-daughter this time, her protagonist in the series, Alicia. She is depicted in such a way that it's like she is representing the goodness Westerman talks about. Yet, it's not satisfying enough for Rita to build an alternative daughter in the way she likes, deep down in her heart. Rita knows that she has a daughter that she's been feeling broken for her some time. If you think in terms of fiction, Rita has her writing as a distraction. I do not mean to say that writing fiction is something secondary, but for Rita, the characters she created is just pseudo-ones, not real. Still, there is so much intervention for her, both from her new editor and her mentor, Daniel. They both function as obstacles for Rita in the text, let alone her helping her. But the question here is why she complicits with her obstacles, why she cannot just resist their interventions. The possible answer might be that she does not dare for it or have enough faith for herself. She soothes herself by saying that she is a well-known writer, has a decent husband and children because she has 2 other daughters apart from Nora, and has a beautiful house in the suburbs. She always thought that being happy is so simple. Even if you go through a series of misfortunes, and just after you can go back to being happy in a flash of a moment. Because she has never experienced an earth-shaking problem like this. When Virginia Woolf, those days she got her legacy from her aunt and stopped working at a few jobs, which were open to women in those days, of course, babysitting, cooking, etc. She thought that no man in the world could make her independent on him ever again. So she believed that she owed her freedom. The things were different, of course, in those times. As for Rita, even though she is able to make her own money, she is not free from her university-based problems. since she belongs to a third way of feminism. Maybe they do not have the independence fully from men. The issue of dependency takes place on different grounds in these days and ages. Rita still is the one who stays at home and takes care of her family's needs. Her profession as a writer comes secondary in her life, And the moment she loses her daughter, who stands for a mirror for her, Rita starts to pay close attention to her writing again, and vice versa. She forgets all about Alicia as soon as she gets back her daughter. However, Nora is not the young girl Rita seeks for when she wakes up at the hospital, but a grown-up woman who perceives the womankind's sufferings. In the second set, Simone de Beauvoir quotes a statement from Julien Benda's well-recognized book, La Porte de Uriel. Benda says, quote, "Man can think of himself without woman, but she cannot think of herself without men," unquote. Women have this tendency to define themselves through other sexist gaze. And at the very beginning of the novel, Rita starts to introduce herself with her husband's qualities. He's being handsome, successful doctor, and a faithful lover. This defining herself through her family does not end up there. After that, it comes her daughter's house and finally her writing. Man comes along and centralizes himself, becomes the absolute, the subject, whereas the woman becomes the other. It is not limited with just Rita and Nora. We see a serial women in Unless who end up desperate, miserable, unsatisfied neither with their lives nor themselves, and some of them are left alone, just as Rita's mother-in-law Louise. She also defines herself through her deceased husband, but this time she appears a more dependent woman than Rita herself. After he died, her husband died, she gets more and more lonely, and we learn that she has nobody to talk to around her. At the very end of the novel, Rita's editor and Louis start talking, and we see how needy she is to talk and pour her heart out. It was more manageable for her when he was alive because she had something to associate herself with, her family, right, Rita. Substantially, we can foresee Rita's potential, and if she were to live in the way she did, without the great instinct of Nora. Louise is a miserable old woman who tries to establish a relationship with her granddaughters and Rita, though she fails because she is too inconspicuous to be noticed by them. And as soon as she gets the chance to connect with someone, she opens her deepest feelings and thoughts to him. She has never done something for herself until then. She has not much to tell, so she tells about her disappointments in others and especially in herself. She seems as the embodiment of the all-female troubles, sufferings, not being taken seriously by her father, husband, son. She has been used by them as a looking glass, reflecting them twice as they are real size, and she's been content with being the faithful wife, devoted mother. In a way, she has been complicit with the man and his repulsive deeds, i.e. the society, and rather than being with the cooperation with women. She repeated the same mistake of hers by choosing to be in solidarity with her real encounter. And for this reason, she has created what she suffered from, and enabled to circle to stay in the same way as it was. One night, Rita and Tom go to a pub with their friends called Frontier Bar, and when she is gone for ladies' room, she sees some words at the back of the toilet covered with a piece of chalk and a rubber which women can use to write. Rita erases some of them to create space for herself and writes, "My heart is broken." This small scene talks for itself actually. It seems as if women are left no other choice than expressing themselves in this small pressed room. Rita is able to face with her true feelings at this point when she does not have to use male-oriented language. They are so repressed that this toilet cabinet is the only place they can be who they really are. They try to find an alternative way of self-expressing, and they feel that their pains will gain recognition by other women when they see the reminiscence of these long, numbed pains. This yearning for expressing oneself leaves its essence all over the novel. Rita, for instance, goes to a writer's workshop for women, which she describes it as a lovely company, as if she wants to think of it as a home. Somewhere she can be at ease and chat with other women who deal with the same problems she does. There are 7 of them who go through different paths of life with different problems. The leader of this group, Gwen, is deeply attached to her husband who wants her to remove her navel, belly button. with an operation just because he claims that it stings awfully. And how do you think she reacts? She does what her husband demands. She does remove this surgery. We can all imagine what a sick thing to do. Yet after a couple of years, they go for divorce and Gwen is left with what she does. All these relationships, which look normal outside, carry some roles with themselves, and women are always the only ones who are supposed to undergo, whereas men do not have a slightest clue what's going on around them. They think that everything is how it is supposed to be. However, silence sometimes means more than it aims. There is this couple, both Rita and Toni know, Mariette and Colin. While he thinks that everything is in the right track for all these years, one day she walks away from him, all of a sudden, and he cannot understand why. Then he finds her diaries in a desk drawer and realizes that misunderstanding separated them. After staying silent for all those years, and why would a woman leave such personal possessions behind? To hurt, of course. Susan Sontag claims that silence only functions with the breakthrough of it at the end. She says, quote, silence inescapably remains a form of speech, unquote. Marietta would manage what she wanted only when she let him know what she's been through and make him suffer as she did once. Then again, what is so heart-wrenching about it is that she comes back to him after she made her point. And that is what I meant when I talk about the dead ends of women. The point which makes Rita a bit different from other women around her is that she is aware of the true position of women in the society. But something stands in her way to grasp this truth to the full extent. I mean, she does not go to extreme to remove her navel like Gwen or transcend the superficial side of her life like Nora either. And being in such a limbo makes her so lavish, uncomfortable, and miserable. All those women characters in Unless indicates how included she is in this ancient problem as a consequence of her witnessing most of the different feminist generations. She saw too much and opened her eyes and mind without a fear to the ignored and repressed reality of women. And eventually, this made a perfect realist writer out of her. Unless is not a book that we can read through in a linear time without stopping to think. It questions lots of notions which have survived in different societies with the same connotations. And these are that women have always been taken for granted regarding to their fathers, husbands, sons, and even men who are the lowest of the low, because a woman can never be as great as men. She is expected to be content with the highest rate she can reach, and there is only goodness for her in this scenario, which has been written for thousands of years by the same author. And that's all I need to say for my purpose.
Thank you, Pınar. Our last speaker is Betül. She was born in Erdoğan in 1989. She is a senior Western language and literature student at Boğaziçi University. She is enthusiastic about attending academic conference on sharing guidance with friends. Previously, she has presented and chaired at a conference organized by Interdisciplinary University. As a future goal, she intends to pursue an academic career in cultural studies. Her main interests are gender, queer theory, and early German cinema. Now I'd like to leave the speech to her.
Thank you. Thank you for your presence. Troilus and Criseyde is a tragic love story with Troilus in its background. I want to start my presentation with a brief summary of the plot for those who are unfamiliar with the story. Troilus is a well-read gentleman. He is closer to, though not equal to, his brother Hector in gallantry and martial spirit. Criseyde is the widow daughter of the Seer Calchas who courted treason and fled to Greece. As is the case in most love stories, Troilus is hopeful of love and lovers in the beginning, but the moment he sees Criseyde, he falls in love with her, and his heart is tormented with this love. He falls on to that. Seeing his situation, Pandarus, Criseyde's uncle, mentions about his love to Criseyde. He motivates, threatens, and lastly persuades her to a discreet love relationship with this young knight. Troilus and Criseyde meet and consummate their love under the supervision of Pınar. After some happy days, they have to separate. Being a seer, Calchas foresees the fall of Troy, and to save his daughter, he wants her to be exchanged with a war prisoner. So Criseyde is obliged to go by promising Troilus that she will return in 10 days. When she goes, however, she understands that she won't be able to return, and she yields to the flirtations of a Greek warrior there. Learning about her betrayal, Troilus gets killed in the battlefield, and after killing many. Though the story is abundant with betrayals, Criseyde is notorious for forsaking Troilus in literary tradition. With Chaucer's style, however, we meet a more realistic portrayal of her. Chaucer helps us to see what is to be a female under threat in every sense, in a male territory. His version of Criseyde is a practical woman who has to protect herself with her instincts. Generally, the plot goes around four male characters, namely Calchas, actor, Pınar, and the female, that is Criseyde. Calchas is not the proper father figure in terms of protection. He leaves his daughter sleeping in her bed and lives while Troy is under siege. Pınar is her uncle. He has a homosocial, if not homoerotic, interest in Troilus. He threatens his niece with suicide if she rejects Troilus' love. He is also motivated about relationship that Criseyde prevails him to think about her safety and honor rather than Troilus' needs and pleasures. Troilus is the male protagonist of the story, however, he is unable to act. He has a romantic vision of love. He is carried away with his fancies and feelings. He sees Criseyde on the pedestal and worships her with his elevated feelings, but he is far from the type of lover that Criseyde needs at that moment. For example, when they decide to exchange her with Prince Antenor, Hector soberly protests. He says, "Sir, she is not a war prisoner. Who ordered this? What did they take us for? For my part, I would wish it were made clear it is not our practice to sell women here." In contrast to this, Troilus only demands for her going in an elevated and mannered way. He sits on the corner of his bed and starts crying. Hector is the only man that Criseyde trusts and looks upon. He is man of principles and honor. He has the masculine power that she needs for her safety. As it is wartime, safety has a primary role in Criseyde's decisions. Chaucer mentioned several times that she was frightened to death in the text throughout. When Pınar informs Troilus' love, she tries to calculate outcomes. First, she thinks about his position. If she rejected his love, Troilus would turn bitter or he might kill himself. As the people of Troy hate her due to her father's treason, they would kill her if she caused such a thing. Other decisive element is Pınar's manipulation and motivation. He says, "Please, Troilus is so in love with you that you must help. He will die unless you do." He forces her to offer her beauty to Troilus. If in such beauty pity cannot thrive, then it is pity you should be alive. He even threatens her with killing himself. "I will cut my throat, I with this very knife," and burst into tears. Under this situation, she has no option but to respond to his love. 3 times she murmured with a scornful sigh, "Oh heaven, how unfortunate for me, for my name and my position lie in danger, and my uncle's life maybe. But by God's guidance, I shall present
think how to keep my honor and to keep my uncle too. Then she ceased to live. Seeing that she has softened Panda's further guarantees that she doesn't need to do other than occasionally smiling at him, etc. Chaucer spends great amount of time to emphasize her inner turmoil and insecurity. She quakes in hysteria, not knowing what to do. This emphasis on her feelings de-romanticizes the quarter romance and deconstructs. Chaucer's Criseyde is not a frivolous woman who betrays her beloved. Neither is she a romantic lover who will return despite the impending death. She has to be practical and realistic to make best out of this love relationship, and once she is able to get out of it, she does so. Criseyde is the one and only principal female character of this story, which draws attention of the reader. Her acts and deeds are juxtaposed with the female characters. Chaucer positions her as the only realistic and practical character, besides Hector. With his unique style, he makes it clear that she had to escape. Troilus is too self-interested to be a protective lover. Pınar is not interested in her passion. He only tries to use her as a means to be close to Troilus. When he sees Troilus is crying for Criseyde's departure, he says, "Besides all this, you must know as much as I do here. The town and roundabout is full of ladies, greater than to your such. In my opinion, I will search them out and find you one or two. You needn't doubt. Be happy that they got my own dear brother. If she is lost, we can procure another." Under the circumstances, Criseyde does best she can. Her pace helps Chaucer to make the cardio ethics of quarter romance by bringing this medium to her house. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Betül. I wonder if there are any questions. You can ask.
I'm going to ask a few questions, but the first one is for Pınar and Kahveci's unless. You talked about the Bishrak scene that the Muslim woman burns herself, and you described it just as Kahveci says, ignition and reeling. So, do you think that ignition is also a kind of candle that is lit in that darkness? Because we say that in the frontier bar, those women write the things right on the door, and there's a kind of male sphere, and that's the female sphere, and they're just creating that binary positioning and right on itself. What do you think about this one?
Yes, of course you can say that, because this incident is not just a it's not just a thing that Nora all of a sudden finds out. There are some discomforts for her inside her, and she goes home back, and she says to her mother, "Mother, I'm not happy. I'm not happy with my life. I'm not content with my life." And she hugs her from her belly, and it's like she seems like going back to her womb again. We can get that if we analyze it closely. There is some discomfortance with her. And this incident just only functions in the novel as a kind of a lit. She needs something to slap her in the face, and this incident functions in this way in the novel. But Rita, of course, as I said before, is not so, let's say, open this discussion as Nora. But of course, in this three-layered story, of course, Nora is just more accomplished than her mother, even if she is 20-year-old. So you can say that, of course, this is just a tiny bit lit for her. It's not just she all of a sudden realized everything, as I said before, the universal truth. But she seeks this incident, she tries to search herself, she tries to search for a, let's say, point to make her realize, to open her eyes suddenly, and she does find it, eventually.
Okay, thank you. And I want to ask you a second question to Yıldız. Your subject is something, it's not really familiar to me, but I was really interested in one of your sentences was quite striking for me, that was, we did what the others did. So, don't you think that every couple, father and mother, they also do what the others did, and also father and mother are their own other, also in that couple. What do you think about this? It's a general question, but I really wanted your opinion.
Actually, I couldn't get what you exactly.
I'm just asking a general question about that father-mother dichotomy and that binary position between those roles. What do you think about that? Don't you think that they are also their own others in that society, and each couple also their own others in that society? And there's a kind of dilemma in itself. What do you think about this?
Actually, as for me, yes, it is. But as far as I stated Morrison's thoughts, she mostly doesn't state father besides the child. She mostly doesn't get separate the mother from the child, but it's not the same situation with the father.
So, in a way, do you also support this idea? I mean, okay, children get their mother and father, their role models. So, do you really think that they also get the inclination of that otherization in a way from their parents, because they are also others for themselves, or what?
If we think the mother and the child as a whole, because she thinks that even after the birth, the mother and the child doesn't get separated. But in the father and the child, they are not together even before the birth.
So he is the other in a way, you say?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yıldız, can we actually relate this to Freud's Oedipus complex?
Yes, I wanted to also mention a little with Freud, but you know it's really short time and length, so I didn't want to get involved with the Freud also.
I want to, well, maybe it's kind of a comment. Well, Unless seems to be a very interesting novel. Well, the first thing that caught my attention was, the names, Nora and Rita. Do you think that these are allusions? Because Nora reminds me of the character in A Doll's House by,
Yes, you
that
touched
one,
on a
and
perfect
also
point, yes.
there is another play, Educating Rita.
Yes, as I read the novel at first time, I thought that might it be maybe a replica of Nora. Because of course she is in a cage, something like in a cage. Okay, she lives with her boyfriend or her husband. She can go away whenever she wants. But this is also a kind of a cage. Even if she realizes this, of course there is this truth, or okay, we are women, we have some obligations to do, we have some paths to follow. But if you want to get out of it, and if you want to do it suddenly, in a flash of a moment, you will have some troubles with it, of course. With your family, with your surrounding, whatever the society is, how, let's say, modern the society is. I thought this Nora may be a representation, let's say, an illusion of that Nora in Doll's House. And we listened a representation about the Doll's House yesterday, and while I was listening to it, I thought that yes, there might be some connections between these.
Nora goes through the stages that the Nora in A Doll's House. For example, you said Nora's not the little girl Richard is looking for.
Yes.
She's a woman. Just like Troilus is trying to find a little girl
Yes, absolutely.
himself, but Nora grabs her bag and leaves the house. And also, Rita is a reference, I think, to Educating Rita. There is another play titled Educating Rita. If you haven't read it,
No, I haven't.
totally read it.
But if you just mention a bit, maybe we can find a connection between them. Because this Rita is a writer who sells a lot, and that she has lots of novels.
This Rita leaves the school, starts a new life, but then, she's studying English language and literature, but she leaves her department, and then she gets back to the school, and she gets educated. In a way, she knows everything, she gets into the male sphere.
Do you think that this might be the afterlife of the Rita, maybe? If your Rita, let's say, if she followed a different path from that one, maybe she could end up like this.
might be, I mean, it might be a continuation as you
Maybe, yes,
mentioned.
maybe this can be a parallel to that.
We don't know what happened to the Nora in Adolf's house because she just gets her bag and leaves the house. What happens after that thing? Does she survive or does she just fell out of the sky just like a
You can connect all these texts together. Maybe this is kind of a afterlife of their Rita. Okay, she got a good literary education, or she's a writer, or even though she's a light fiction writer, she does write eventually. But it's not like being a writer is just, okay, you're an artist, you are, let's say, out of a society, but no, you're not. My character is not, eventually.
So, I strongly believe, I mean, I just relied his argumentation on your quotation from the book. This is a novel about the lost children or child.
Lost children.
Lost children.
She says lost children,
So,
yes.
Nora was lost. Might
She
be a
thinks that.
continuation.
Maybe, but even if she's a writer, again I'm repeating myself, she is unable to see such things. She thought that at the first time, when she found out that Nora was begging at the street, oh, my little baby, my baby daughter is lost. I lost her.
Yes, just like the Nora in the doll's house, because her husband constantly calls her my sunbird,
Yes, my duck, my bird.
blah blah, animal representation.
Yes, she always says my baby daughter, my little girl, my little child, my baby, etc., etc. She tries to get back her little daughter.
So
but no, she's not lost. Yes, you touched upon a perfect point. Maybe we can connect these texts all together.
So educated Rita.
Educated Rita and her afterlife, maybe. Yes, why not? Yeah.
I have a question for Betül. Betül, do you think Chaucer thinks beyond his age in terms of gender issues, or just like another medieval person?
Actually, there are studies about Chaucer's querying the courtly romance or the various texts that are written by Boccaccio or Decameron. But as he is still a man, the queer studies television is not really interested in him. They are more interested in the modern conscious written text in terms of focus.
I have a question for you. To come back to Beloved and to your final claim about in this chain of women, we have a gap that is produced each time or handed down. And the thing I remember about the novel is that there's this question that's repeated over and over. Is this a story to be passed on? Kind of paraphrasing. So on the one hand, is this gap nonverbal, or is it something, because you also drew attention to this scene where, I mean, it's writing on the body. She says, look at this mark. So that's not so much nonverbal. How is this gap transmitted, or?
Actually, the gap I had mentioned is not something physical, of course. It's something mental. I had mentioned the gap which the children get when they are separated from their mother. Because when they lack motherly affection, they actually miss something and couldn't complete their self. So the gap is something which they cannot complete without finding their mother or the affection of